ESPN Radio's Jorge Sedano with Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team. Of course, George and Jen, you can hear them 9 to 11 weeknights here on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio, including tonight. Hey. All right, George, the Mets, you've been doing sports for a long time. What do you make of the tear that they're on right now?
Man, I got to be honest with you. I didn't expect this. Look, I didn't expect them to win the division, okay, let alone get to this point. I think we all thought the Nationals were going to be there, and that thing was a train wreck and a disaster. And the Mets have been, probably the second best story potentially in the National League, because the Cubs were the best story. And had they made it to the World Series, I think even the most ardent of Mets fans would have agreed that most of America wanted to see the Cubs there. Now, I don't think you care, and I don't blame you for not caring, but generally that would have been the best story. But the Mets are the second best story because, first of all, they're always looked at as kind of the redheaded stepchild of New York, right? Like they're not the Yankees. You know, they've been through a lot of issues, including their ownership issues over the last several years. But now they've got it right. Sandy Alderson, Terry Collins, the great young pitching staff, the trade for Cespedes, it really just changed the way this team looked. And now, it's hard to argue that they don't look like the best team in baseball right now. I will say this, whoever comes out of the American League, though, will give them a run for their money. But with that pitching staff, man, they could beat anybody.
Where is Daniel Murphy, and how do they fit Babe Ruth into his uniform?
Man, it's a great question, right? Good Lord. When you think about it, Daniel Murphy has the most consecutive games with a hit, RBI, and a run in postseason history. And he's tied with, who? Lou Gehrig, okay? This is what we're talking about. One of the most historic moments in postseason history, and it's Daniel Murphy that we're describing here. It's unfathomable. I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams, Greeny said it best this morning, if you would have had your pick of guys on that team to think somebody was going to have a historic run on offense, I don't know how many guys you go to first before you get to Daniel Murphy, but at least a handful is what I got to think.
Armen and Levack, 104.5 The Team. Jorge Sedano with us. Jorge Sedano of the NBA Lockdown podcast at ESPN.com. Hey, George, in regards to the World Series, you had mentioned that an American League team is going to give the Mets a run for their money. What makes you think that regardless of who comes out of the American League, they have a chance to beat down or, get to this Mets team that's hot?
Okay, look, do I think they're going to win the American League? I don't know. I don't think any of us really know. But here's the thing. With Toronto specifically, let's start with them. They're just such a free-swinging bunch, man, that when they get going, good Lord, they're unstoppable. And in an era of where everyone's taking pitches and just trying to feel pitchers out and kind of, tire them out, they don't think about that. They don't overthink their approach at the plate that way. They just go hack, man. They're like a softball team. They just go out there and are free swingers. Now, that can work to your disadvantage, too, as we saw the other day when they lost, 15, 16 to 2 or whatever it was or whatever. But, there are moments that we've seen throughout the season where they're just unstoppable when they get on a roll hitting, and you can't do anything about it. And even the Mets pitching staff, as good as it is, may have some struggles against a team like that with the lineup being so deep occasionally. But like I said, it could work to Toronto's disadvantage. With Kansas City, on the other hand, they've got, I think, maybe as good a balanced team as anyone in baseball. They've already been to the World Series last year, so experience is there. They're a really young team as well, so, that bodes well for them just moving forward in general. But in this particular matchup, you're looking at the best bullpen in baseball. I don't think that's even a question as far as I'm concerned. They've got good starting pitching in Cueto and Volquez. And I think that, again, their hitting is really balanced. They got guys that can hit for power, guys that can spread, hit the different areas of the field. They're just really well-rounded. So I think, again, both have different strengths in the American League, but both could give anyone a run for their money, not just the Mets. Look, the Mets just happen to be the team that's there now.
ESPN's Jorge Sedano of George and Jen, 9 to 11, weeknights here on 104.5 The Team. And Sedano hosts the NBA Lockdown podcast at ESPN.com. I know your basketball pants have to be beaming right now with the NBA season kicking off next week.
George, I'm just going to read you a statement and get out of the way. The Cleveland Cavaliers and Tristan Thompson have agreed to a 5-year, $82 million deal.
Man, I know that sounds wild, and yeah, look, I'm with you, man. $17 million or whatever it is, $17 million for a backup power forward is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. But that's the NBA that we're heading towards, because we're going to have a cap explosion here over the next 3 years. Is that a good move? Man, I don't know if I would have signed him to that deal. But if you're the Cavs and LeBron is his guy, and LeBron's agent, who's LeBron's guy or boy, represents him, what are you going to do there? Like, you have no choice other than to sign that guy, or you're just going to have a disgruntled superstar. And I don't think you want that either. Considering that you've got such a small window to win championships, and you're talking about LeBron maybe having, 2-3 years, maybe 4 tops where he's the best player in the game, because Anthony Davis is certainly on his way. Yeah. And I would think that window could even be smaller for LeBron as the best player, because Anthony Davis is so good and so young. That you have to appease him. You have to do what you got to do. And the East is so weak. You got to take advantage of it. So just do what you got to do and pay the piper later, man. Like, that's it. Like, no one's going to cry that Dan Gilbert has to pay $65 million in luxury tax. And the least of them will be LeBron. Because you know what? For all the stuff that LeBron came back to Cleveland and hashed things out with Dan Gilbert, I'll tell you this. I'm pretty sure that Comic Sans letter is still in the back of his head, and he probably told him, look, I'll come back, but you're going to have to pay. And I don't mean just pay me. You're going to have to pay everybody, and you're going to have to break records as far as luxury tax dollars are concerned, and it looks like they're headed in that direction.
NBA Lockdown host, ESPN's Jorge Sedano. Get the podcast, ESPN.com. George, what's the one NBA headline that really gets you excited, that you're most passionate about right now?
I don't think anyone is giving the Warriors their just due after winning the championship. It's weird. They got a young nucleus. They're only going to get better, I think. But we're all talking about Kevin Durant's return and how can Oklahoma City win a championship. And it's his last year in Oklahoma City, potentially, of course. What's going to happen in free agency? Then San Antonio, they don't normally go out and sign the big splashy free agent. They went after LaMarcus Aldridge, and they're the team to beat. So we're talking about all these other teams, even Houston, right? Ty Lawson ends up there. How does that help their cause? But no one's talking about the guys that just won. And the guys that just won are not only great on offense, as I was telling you guys all last year when we talked, but they were one of the best teams on defense too. And they're young, man. Like, they're really good. So barring an injury to one of their big guys, whether it's Clay or Steph or Draymond, they're going to be right there. But the West is so finicky. It really is. Like, I mean, look, the Clippers and the Spurs, neither of them got past the second round. So that's how wild it is out there. But I just think it's weird that nobody seems to be talking about the champs, and everyone's talking about all the other teams out West.
Hey, tell me about the NBA Lockdown podcast, what we can expect from it.
Just insanity. It's me, it's Amin Al-Hassan, it's Tom Haberstroh, it's Izzy Gutierrez. I mean, the four of us have been friends for a while, so I think what you end up getting is you get a podcast of 4 dudes who are tight, and we clown on each other while talking basketball and clowning on basketball and players and teams, and obviously giving you the insight and the depth of analysis that you want. Haberstroh specifically is one of our top analytics guys at the entire company. Forget about just basketball. So you get that aspect of it as well. You get Amin, who worked in a front office, and then you get guys like me and Izzy, who covered multiple teams, who have been out in the field covering NBA teams and the league for over a decade now. So you get a little bit of everything, and plus the fact that we try to have some fun with each other and at each other's expense.
Beautiful. NBA Lockdown Podcast, ESPN.com with Jorge Sedano. And, of course, hear him tonight, George and Jen, and every weeknight, 9 to 11 on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. George, it was fun, dude. Thanks for your time today, and we'll do it again, baby.
You got it, boys. And, by the way, if you download the last podcast, we talk about the Knicks. We did our over-unders, win totals for the NBA. The last 2 podcasts our NBA win totals, over-unders. Last podcast, most recent one from Tuesday, has the Knicks in it. And you may be surprised what some of us think about the Knicks.
You're a sassy, teasing man, George Sedano.